The Defence Force is continuing to closely monitor Chinese warships off the Australian coast as they head through the Great Australian Bight. It comes after China's ambassador to Australia defended the actions of the Naval Task Force and signalling it's likely to conduct similar exercises in the future. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts joins us now for more on this. So Stephen, where are the ships now and where are they going?
Melissa, the ships are now, according to the Prime Minister, about 600 kilometres southwest of Adelaide. So they appear to be heading through the Great Australian Bight. And the assumption of most people is that they are going to now probably circumnavigate Australia. I mean, they could, of course, turn around and go in a different direction. But the most likely route is that they will probably continue right past the south of Australia and then most likely loop up the western coast, taking the Naval Task Group past Perth, past Australian naval bases there, and then potentially north back to China or back out into Southeast Asia. We simply don't know. Now, the government is still facing questions, of course, about its initial response to the task group, not just its passage down the east coast of Australia, but also, in particular, what happened a week ago when it was in the middle of the Tasman Sea and when it conducted those live fire exercises disrupting commercial airline traffic. The government has been pressed again. Why is it that it first learnt of this via a Virgin pilot who picked up a radio broadcast from one of the Chinese warships? The government, though, continues to defend the ADF's response, and today the Defence Industry Minister, Pat Conroy, said that it had been subjected to an unprecedented level of naval surveillance by the Australian and New Zealand militaries, drawing a contrast to what he said was a pretty lackadaisical amount of attention paid back in 2019 when the coalition was in office, when a Chinese naval task group was down the west coast of Australia. Let's take a listen to what the minister had to say.
That Chinese flotilla was the subject of the highest level of surveillance that you've ever seen from the Australian Defence Force for a cruise in international waters near Australia. And this is another thing that really annoys me about the opposition. They're happy to ramp up the rhetoric where to have similar Chinese sailing of near Australian waters in 2022 off the west coast of WA, and the last government subjected that cruise to nowhere near the level of surveillance that we have had with this current flotilla.
So, Stephen, China's ambassador to Australia has said Beijing has nothing to apologise for. What's the response been from the government?
Yeah, that's right. Xiao Chen spoke exclusively late yesterday to the ABC in Tasmania whilst he was in Hobart to carry out some official business there, as well as making a public address. Now, the ambassador was asked a couple of things. In particular, he was asked whether this is the new normal, whether Chinese flotillas would continue to sail around and near Australia as its military might continues to grow. Now, Xiao Chen wasn't definitive. He said in the end those decisions wouldn't be made by a civilian like him, but by the Chinese Defence Ministry and the very top levels of the leadership. But he did say there was nothing unusual about this, that China would continue to sail throughout the world as its navy grows, suggesting, I guess, that task force visits like this are going to continue throughout the future. And of course, it's worth noting that chimes with exactly what Australian senior defence and intelligence leaders are saying. They expect that this will become increasingly normal as China's blue water capabilities grow. Let's take a listen to Xiao Chen, who also defended the way that China's conducted live fire drills, saying it was absolutely appropriate to do it so far out from sea, and saying that the notice it gave was completely acceptable.
I do see there's a reason why the Chinese side should feel sorry about that, or even to think about to apologize for that. We in China, we look at Australia as our partner. There's no reason for us to pose threat to Australia.
Now, of course, the Prime Minister has been asked about this as well not that long ago. In particular, he reiterated that Australia would have liked China to give more notice for these live-fire drills, whilst conceding that it was absolutely within its rights to sail through these international waters. More broadly on the relationship between Australia and China, he was asked if this undermines his government's narrative that it's successfully stabilised the relationship with China. Let's take a listen to the response from the Prime Minister.
Let's be very clear. I have said about the relationship with China, we will cooperate where we can, we'll disagree where we must, and we'll engage in our economic interest. Here we have disagreed with China. Read the notice that was given. We believe it was appropriate to have been given more notice, and we made that clear last Friday, including, of course, making it clear after these events, face-to-face with our Foreign Minister, to the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi at the G20 meeting where they had a meeting on the sidelines in South Africa.
So as you can hear, the Prime Minister there not playing down necessarily the significance of what's happened, but sending a message there that Australia very much has this under control. Not all analysts agree. Some argue that this is a big strategic shock for Australia, and whilst the Australian Defence Force has put a lot of assets into monitoring this task force, there are still real questions to answer about just how swift and effective Australia's response has been. So this debate is likely to continue for the coming weeks.